So we're here to talk through this double LITS by John Bulten. It adds to the set of pi themes we have this week. A lot were numeric. This is very much about the geometric shape of pi. You'll see all these shapes, sometimes with a slightly longer leg, but all these shapes are isomorphic to the sort of branch structure, which is true of pi, where you have effectively 2 points which branch off 2 times, like this. Anyway, getting to the puzzle itself, one of the easiest regions in a double LITS is any region that has just 9 cells. That's going to have its single cell in the middle unused and the other 8 shaded. Having those in, we're going to use the note 2x2 rule and put in several of these unusable cells. If we shade any of these cells, we're going to have to make a 2x2 square similarly if we shade these. If we have to go through these, that won't work, so we get something like this. Down in the bottom, we also can't shade both of these cells, so we can't have this. And now again, we have 9 cells left over. A pretty common pattern. Shade 4, mark unshaded the middle one, shade the other 4. We should think a little bit on this side of how we're going to fill this out. We have 11 cells left over. It looks like in all circumstances this cell must be shaded. If you blocked that off, you'd lose 4 extra cells and couldn't fit 2 tetrominoes. The other tetromino is going to have to be up in this spot, and there are sort of 5 cells open for it, so it's really going to take at least these 3. One of these cells will be unused, and then if I just think about filling in the rest, something like this, just give me something like this, and I get a reasonable start over on the side of the grid. I now have 2 things to think about. One is how the bottom stays connected. You can start to see a little bit how there's a wall forming, but I think the very first thing we have to focus on is this left side. Focus on the fact that this tetromino is going to need to connect through this pi shape to get out to the rest of the grid. And so it's going to be using at least one of these cells to connect into this, and so this will be a root where this is the first join. The thing that really drives the first part of the solve is recognizing sort of the limitations of using connectivity through this top region. So if this group connects into here, and again, the 2 LITS in a double LITS shape don't touch each other, this is going to need to connect again, and it's going to have to, it really doesn't have a way to reach over to this side. So it's either going to have to connect through this channel, it's going to connect over the top. And if it connects over the top, its next place to link back is going to be back through this space. And so one circumstance is you might have these 4 cells shaded. To connect back through this space, it can at most use this cell and come straight down, but that will have an eye touching an eye. And so it's not only that this cell connects to this cell has to reconnect back to something that's in this channel. And the furthest down it can touch is the same cell right now that's furthest down and shaded on the left. And so at the very least, we can mark these in the grid. Then we still have the situation that this isn't going to connect effectively over the top. So now this has to connect somewhere, and so it's going to have to connect immediately to something on the right. And when we actually then think through some of these consequences, this is going to have to split like this to be able to be shaded. This is going to come down like so, and then because these need to connect, it's going to touch here. We get this is a intermediate state. Now we see fully, as we push down 1 cell on this tetromino, that the left really is isolated. We actually have a case where for this lower left region, it has to use this cell here, or it wouldn't be fully connected. We have to get this group overall connected to this group. And there are a few things you can think about to get there. One of them is really the root. Is there a way through this region to keep these connected? There really isn't. So this is going to have to connect in a few possible ways, but let's sort of look through them. This could come to the right and go across, but as soon as you sort of see coming to the right, this can't connect back to this region. So there's really not a credible way that this whole branch is going to come like this and connect over. This could connect straight through this region and avoid using these cells. And so there's like an option where you have to shade this cell to do the top, which means you can't shade this cell. So let's imagine we don't use this cell. That means the connectivity from the bottom is going to have to come through here, over to here, and we're going to have another eye touching another eye. And so there are a few challenges that you face, but one is that there's really no connection to the right. There's no connection through this region. There's no connection through this way. And so the only way that the bottom stays connected to the grid is by coming and taking some of these cells, and that will mark as an unusable, these up here, which now actually forces this very top part to come over, and it can't come down. That would form an L touching an L, so it does this. You can shade these 3 cells for sure. For this to stay connected, let's take those cells. We now no longer can reach down to these. We need to get these shapes still touching. We do also need to think about how we fit in a sufficient number of tetrominos on the right side. So let's maybe shift to that for a bit. There looks to be one tetromino will be somewhere in this bottom space. In this top space, really, this cell is going to need to be shaded whatever happens. If it's not shaded, we lose these 3, we get 4, and 4, we get 8 total cells left over. So this is a 4th cell. That now means this is the top tetromino. The other one is going to use cells like this, not use that space. The next thing to then think about, this is going to come up and take at least one more. This has to be connected here. This has to be connected some down here. Let's say this took the lower cell. That's going to form an I. It's also going to then consequently force an L over here. This group coming out is going to have to then avoid this cell, and so it has an option to be an I or an L. And that's not going to work because it's going to have the same shape touching, whether it is the I or the L, because we had an I here and an L there. So this is the real shape that's formed. And now limits the options on the side. Forces just the shape. There's only enough room for this T, and we finish out through this I. So it's a LITS puzzle that has really 2 major sticking points, but they're both around connectivity, and it's frankly pretty honest connectivity, which is why I was glad John got this pattern to work. The first was the one we saw at the start, where we have a tetromino we can't fully specify, but it's going to connect through another tetromino here. And then knowing that it's not going to come to the top, but going to have to come back through this side, we got sort of this daisy chain working on this side. And ultimately we need the bottom and top to come together. And here was sketching out that we really don't have enough room to get a chain of tetrominos through the right regions. You can't connect within the same region. And we couldn't, because of 2 eyes touching, use this to be a connection. And so we had to come through the last tetromino option in this larger shape to come from here and into this group. And that got us to the end. So hope you enjoyed this puzzle. Hope you enjoyed some of the various ways we used pi during this themed puzzle week. And we'll see you again soon.